Hello, colleagues. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are connecting us from. Welcome to FIP-WiSE Women's Leadership Lab for Connectivity, Growth, Energy, and Inspiration. This web panel is taking place alongside FIP's virtual Congress program. Thank you to our Congress participants and everyone joining us live today. And thank you to those who will be watching this recording afterwards. Please let us know by typing into the chat box from which country you are from, which area of pharmacy you are practicing, and whether you are a pharmacy student or friend of a pharmacist. I'd also like to warmly welcome our speakers and our moderator, whom I'll hand over to shortly. My name is Nilhan Uzman. I'm a pharmacist trained in Turkey. I've been working at FIP as a lead for education policy and implementation. I'm leading the FIP-WiSE Women in Science and Education initiative. Before we start, I would like to share a couple of announcements and logistics with you. This webinar is currently being recorded. The recording will be available at FIP's website. All participants will remain muted. You may leave your camera on, meet your fellow participants. As you can see, we are organizing this event, not in a webinar format, but in a meeting format. So we have 47 participants so far and will be joined by many, I believe. So you can connect from your colleagues and fellow participants through that. You can share questions from the chat box to join the discussion. We'll be picking these up along the discussion. And if you have any feedback about this session, please contact us at webinars@fip.org. So please engage, connect with each other, and leave your camera open if you can. This week, FIP is celebrating the World Pharmacy Week. This week is full of exciting events, exciting launches to transform our profession and global health. As you know, 25th of September is the World Pharmacist Day, and we are delighted to turn this week into a series of celebrations. Happy World Pharmacy Week to everyone, and thanks to all of you for being with us today at this event. Today, FIP-WiSE Women's Leadership Lab will be chaired by FIP-WiSE Chair Claire Thompson, and will be facilitated by myself and my dear FIP-WiSE intern Anyango Esther. I would like to thank to both of them for their support and their collaboration in making this event happen. Before we start, I would like to give a brief introduction about FIP's EquityRx and FIP-WiSE initiative. EquityRx is FIP's leading campaign for championing women in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences, which addresses equity and equality and diversity in pharmacy and global health. EquityRx currently focuses on 3 streams. 1, promoting equity in pharmacy workforce. 2, empowering women as informal caregivers. And 3, the FIP-WiSE initiative. On February 11th this year, the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, we have launched the FIP-WiSE initiative to empower women in these fields to achieve their full potential and attract students and young women into the fields of science and education. We have conducted a successful social media advocacy campaign at our launch with powerful messages to unite women in science and education. We raised awareness and got tremendous support, and we have been sharing stories through FIP-WiSE World video series from inspiring women in science and education. We have just concluded our FIP-WiSE strategy meeting with FIP-WiSE team and planned exciting initiatives to support women in pharmaceutical science and education. Stay tuned and follow us from FIP's communication channels. Today, FIP-WiSE is pleased to be delivering the FIP-WiSE Women's Leadership Lab today. About today's event, women are powerful agents of change, and the benefits and effectiveness of equitable representation in leadership and decision-making are evident. The findings show that COVID-19 outcomes are systematically better in countries led by women. Still, women continue to be vastly underrepresented in decision-making, and in healthcare, why relatively few women lead in a profession where 70% of the workforce is female is an ongoing paradox. Today, FIP-WiSE Women in Science and Education Women's Leadership Lab We'll create a virtual platform to bring women leaders in pharmaceutical science and pharmacy education together to discuss enablers of becoming a leader and how to thrive thereafter. Today, you will learn about enablers for including women in decision-making at all levels, identify practical ways to pursue leadership roles in pharmaceutical science and pharmacy education, and you will access the resources and opportunities about women's leadership development. Today, as we are organizing this in a meeting format, please take snapshots, pictures of today's special event, and post on your social media. Don't forget to use hashtag FIP-WiSE and also tag FIP. That's all from me. And now I'm pleased to hand over to our moderator for today's session, the FIP-WiSE Chair, Claire Thompson. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Nilhan. It's an absolute delight to be chairing this session today and to be amongst such wonderful company. My smile has just got bigger and bigger as I've seen the collection of people that are joining us today from across the globe. I thank you all for joining from just up the road from me in the UK to Nepal, Australia, the US, Chile. Welcome one and all to the FIP-WiSE session today. It's fabulous to see the FIP Global Development Goals launched this week, and congratulations Nilhan and Catherine to the team for such an exciting, inspirational and aspirational launch of these 21 goals. And it's fantastic to see that equity, equality and FIP-WiSE underpins all of these activities and has its own goal at number 10. So delighted to be part of this. And without further ado, is Catherine on the line? Can I pass across to Catherine?
Certainly can, Claire.
Marvellous.
Thanks so much, Claire. Thank you, Nilhan. Hello, Dominique. Lovely to see our president here with us today as well. Now, I want to just walk you through a couple of talking points before we introduce the video of the development goals. You will all know the development goals themselves have evolved from the pharmaceutical workforce development goals. And also, Nilhan's made a really good point about the fact that COVID has heightened and highlighted the inequities and inequalities across all of our societies and communities during this year, both in terms of the handling of the disease itself and the outcomes. And it's given us a little bit of an opportunity to spotlight in on inequity and inequality. So COVID, we know, has had increased detrimental effect on women in society, on different ethnicities within our societies, on those with lower incomes, those who carry a greater disease burden, maybe those who are suffering from ill health, and of course those who are older. And I think we all knew that health is inequitable and inaccessible for many, but COVID has really highlighted that. We always considered that in developing and evolving goal number 10 around gender equity and diversity, that we would expand and enhance that goal to be equity and equality, to deliver universal pharmacy coverage. And, you know, Dominique would say that we need to be able to bridge the gap between our countries and bridge the gap between our societies around the pharmacy services they can access. So really and truly, we really need to consider the equity of our communities and the equity within our profession more widely. It's timely and it is time. Our goal has now expanded to align with the UN, so we leave no one behind. And that includes in our daily lives as well. And Nilhan and I note, Lena's also on the call, we really seek to try and make sure that we bring people with us on our way so that we walk the walk as we talk the talk. So colleagues, how are we realising this, and context for you for today? Well, in the context of FIP-WiSE, we can see goal 10 linking particularly with goal number 1, academic capacity, goal number 5, competency development, goal number 6, leadership development. The goal number 10 is obviously the all-embracing one, and also goal number 13, which is policy development. In fact, you could see that every single goal links to every other goal, but that's just a couple of highlights for you. And FIP's remit to empower women across pharmacy and pharmaceutical science to increase representation in decision making and support them to thrive is key in this. In the context of today, I wanted to take a backward step and remember an initiative first enacted in 2008 and signed off in a unique agreement with UNESCO in 2010, so a decade ago, by Professor Cam Midder and Professor Ian Bates and Leeds at UNESCO, was an overt move towards establishing a mechanism for recognising women in science and education. Indeed, a decade ago, the need for us to recognise and support women in science and education was identified. The original wording in the agreement was activities will also seek to promote gender equality and empower women academics and scientists in collaborative research and policy development, all within the context of pharmacy, of course. Equity was at the heart from the very beginning. Whilst that work underpins the UNITWIN programme, which has taken place in Africa, we want to roll that out across all WHO regions. And therefore, I think this notion of equity can be rolled out across all our WHO regions. I wanted to recognise the importance of leadership from my own personal experience as the first woman CEO of FIP. And of course, being a woman isn't something that I think about daily because that's who I am. But I do understand that walking the walk is really important, and that I seek to be equal and equitable in the actions that I undertake. And I know that standing shoulder to shoulder with President Jourdan, he would feel exactly the same. There are many times leadership is not realised until after the event, and that we should all remember that we lead when we make and take decisions and empower others to do the same. And that's a responsibility, but also an empowering statement. So FIP-WiSE, Women in Science and Education, Women's Leadership Lab, creates a virtual platform to bring women leaders in pharmaceutical science and pharmacy education to support and enable you in these fields to achieve your full potential. I want to take a moment to recognise the speakers that we have, because I think it's just a superb range of speakers that we can listen to and learn from. We have a keynote speaker from the United Nations Population Fund. We have panelists and topics being led, leadership skills. Sorry, I'll introduce. That was Melton Duck from UNFPA. Apologies, colleagues. And Melton is the Gender Programme Coordinator. We have panelists and their topics for pharmaceutical industry. We have Nadia Abdelhadi from North Africa, County Manager, Medtronic Algeria. We have A Journey of 1,000 Miles Begins with a Single Step, highlighting academic leadership with Christiana Chai, Head of Pharmacy Department, National University of Singapore. We have Being a Virtual Leader Using Technology, and boy, oh boy, have we all had to learn how to do that this year. Women in Technology, Leonora O'Brien, very happy to welcome Leonora, who's the founder and CEO of Pharmapod Ireland. We have Leading Gender Transformative Leadership, an example of gender equity in education from Beauty, Aria, who's from the USA. We have Next Generation Women Leaders, where we have Aya Jamal from Sudan. So I think this is, fasten your seatbelts, colleagues, sit back, and you will be really entertained with today's presentation. That's enough from me right now, but I really wanted to reflect almost like the global imperative, the decade that has just passed us and how this has been a priority, and now we're at the inception, and the fact that our global development goals set the pathway for the decade ahead. And we have much to do, and I'm really excited to see all of our panelists under the stewardship of Claire. I think it's time for us to look at the video of the development goals and, again, start the conversations. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm smiling at Alina's message about who's dancing. I'm certainly dancing. What a fabulous launch and a fabulous video. Welcome to those who are just joining us. I'd like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Milton Agduct, from the Gender Programme Coordinator at the United Nations Population Fund. Milton, over to you.
Hi, hello. I'm so excited. I don't know why I'm so excited, because I love to talk and I talk a lot. But I mean, when I actually saw all these members and listeners coming from all over the world, I mean, it's so excited. And I love the music and I love the concept of development goals of FIP, because as a member of UN, as a staff member of UN, you know, we're just, I mean, working a lot on development goals. So it's great to see actually other institutions like yours is using the same concept as well. We're experiencing weird times in every online meeting, webinar, training. I'm thinking that I got used to talk over these, I mean, virtual platforms, but it is still weird actually not to look into the eyes of the listeners. Anyways, using virtual platforms this frequently is rather new, but the issue that I will talk about is as old as humankind. But before starting, actually, I want to give a very, big, thank you to the International Pharmaceutical Federation's Women's Leadership Lab for inviting me for such a special meeting. Thank you, thank you. The gender regime where masculinity and femininity has been constructed within dictates the roles and responsibilities of women and men in the framework of gender that focuses on individuals. On the other hand, it politically positions itself in front of the social relations, which is defined through more passive concepts like tradition and culture, and it creates, intensifies, and pursues gender stereotypes. In that regard, the professional qualifications are easily disregarded for a women professional who move up the managerial level, and that woman is defined within traditional laws as a married woman by her relations with her male professional family members, whom are the real owners of that territory, regardless of her success in the field that she is working for. I just want to share a story of a women journalists that I have interviewed for my PhD dissertation many years ago, which was about the survival of women journalists in the gendered newsroom. And before she retired, she was the Deputy General Director of the National News Agency of Turkey, which is a very high position. When you are listening to the story of Elvan Baransel, her name is Elvan Baransel, you can put any profession to the field of work. I mean, just think about your, field of profession. And the story goes like this, quote, Elvan is talking to me. I have started my professional life as the member of a family with a journalist origin. At first, I was being introduced as the daughter of our journalist brother, Fikret Otyam. Fikret Otyam is her father, and he's one of the well-known journalists and a painter in Turkey. Then I have got married with a colleague, and this time I have started to be introduced as Elvan, daughter of our journalist brother Fikret Otyam, and wife of our colleague Ali Baransel. He is also a very well-known journalist in Turkey. I would never want to be misunderstood that as if I'm annoyed of those last names. However, those two last names were like my rivals to compete during my entire life as a journalist. I always faced with disadvantages of these two last names. I showed beyond regular effort to reach higher levels without the shadow of those last names on my shoulders. In order to do those, in order not to cause any trouble, I always showed up first and left last in the agency every day. I always accepted the morning shifts right after night shifts without any objections. But when I retired in 2005, I mean, after 26 years of fight, I tragicomically noticed that I have failed. My retirement announcement was made as Elvan Baransel, who is the wife of Ali Baransel and who moved up to the position of Deputy General Director from reporter at National News Agency of Turkey, surprisingly decided to leave the agency. End of quote. Gender inequality, which is embedded in gender discrimination, is deeply rooted in the global workforce practices, whichever sector you can think of. On paper, gender inequality is a long list of statistics showing the imbalance of power between men and women. In reality, gender inequality is a major issue that affects not only the lives of individuals, men and women, but stunts economic growth and innovation, along with the hindering social development. As a testament of this fact, actually, you have shown us 2030 agenda. Actually, United Nations even named gender equality as one of the sustainable goals as part of 2030 agenda. And your institution, Pharmaceutical Workforce Development Goals, actually underlines the importance of gender equality and diversity. So what is the status of women in the workforce in general? I know that by heart you know some of the statistics, but I just want to frame the issue. According to 2019 World Bank data, women account for 40% or more of the total labor force in many countries. Despite progress, women are scarce among senior leaders. As of the May 2019 Fortune list, only 33 women, it's just 6.6%, were CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Women account for less than a third of senior roles globally. Let's take a look at the pharmaceutical sector. It was stated in one of the reports of FIP that women proportion of the total global pharmacy workforce will increase over 70% by 2030, which is mirroring the proportion of women in the wider health workforce now. However, delivered by women, led by men motto is very suitable to use here, as the percentage of women in the workforce and leadership positions are not going hand in hand, not going parallel. When it comes to the leadership, only 25% of the leaders are women in the sector. According to Petro Bilkovic's article written in 2019, there's only one female CEO among the top 10 pharmaceuticals, and this demonstrates that there is still a long way to go. Why the picture of the workforce is like that when we're looking from the perspective of women? The gains of the feminist movement paved the way to women to be in all walks of life. Women are more educated than ever. Number of female students are more than male students in several fields at the universities. Legislations open all the doors for women to be part of the society and the workforce in many countries all around the world. Private sector has developed many strategies to have more women on board, like longer maternity leaves, childcare services, back to work programs, flexible working hours. Women are talented, hardworking, innovative. It seems that there is no tangible barrier for women when it comes to workforce entry. But the problems regarding women and workforce relations is twofold. One layer is enduring in the workforce once entered, and the other is advancing in the steps towards leadership. Resistance, discrimination, isolation actually increases when women move up the ranks because of the gender. What are the barriers? Actually, there are lots of barriers, but I just want to underline 4 of them. Gendered social norms are penetrated within the society, which is affecting the workforce as well. The gender regime, where the masculinity and femininity has been constructed within, dictates the roles and responsibilities of women and men with actually thicker pants. Despite the developments and changing times, the gender regime still leads to stigma against and limitations for women in the workforce. A quick example to be more clear on these 3 bullet points that I have mentioned. Women are overrepresented in support functions like administrations, while men tend to be concentrated in operations, profit and loss, and research and development. All viewed as critical experiences for CEO and board level positions. In 2020, 40% of human resources directors will be women, are women, compared to 17% of chief marketing officers and 16% of chief information officers. Stigma and stereotyping on women as the support staff everywhere, at home, at work. This last one is men, actually. Men are not ready to share the pie. Who wants to share a pie, especially when it was given very long time ago, and underline that it will be theirs forever, not to be shared with anyone. How to remove barriers? I mean, we have to be a bit positive. I'm just coming to the end of my speech. The first one, I mean, we have to see everything from a gender transformative approach. Challenging gender social norms via gender transformative approach. This approach actually aspires to change the reality that we're living in. It tackles the root causes of gender inequality, reshapes unequal power relations. It is a gradual and complex journey, yet an incredible rewarding one. It is not straightforward or simple path that can be taken alone or made with a simple checklist, but I mean, we have to stick to gender transformative approach. 3 main paths should be followed by the companies. The first one is changing the environment, because without these, actually, the approach will not be gender transformative. Changing the environment, transforming the structures and institutions that reinforce and perpetuate gender inequalities and discriminations. How we will do is gender mainstreaming is one of the important paths to make equality integral part of the policies and programs at all levels in all spheres, like you have done with your own development goals. Another path is incorporating gender equality into corporate principles and values through international standards, like, for example, ILO conventions on gender equality, UN Women Empowerment Principles, UNDP's Gender Seal, UNFPA's Business Against Domestic Violence platform, or equal pay, talent development, job flexibility, special leaves like parental leave, education grants, child care services, especially work-family reconciliation policies, back-to-work programs are some examples for changing the environment to a more gender-sensitive direction. The second path is empowering women. This is a long process of women gaining control over their own lives. Awareness raising sessions, programs on gender equality and how gender equality would change their lives, our lives as women, family, society, the workforce itself. Building self-confidence, starting from formal school system to informal trainings, increase access to and control over resources for women, increase visibility of women in the workforce with good examples, good leadership examples, developing special programs for women's leadership, mentoring, creating platforms to exchange experiences. Or another one is establishing support mechanisms for domestic violence survivors, survivors of harassment in the workplace. Some of the research actually shows us that one of the important barriers before women when entering job or entering in job or rising in the leadership position is domestic violence. So as companies, the companies should actually support the staff that are working for them when they are survivors of domestic violence. This is an issue, very new issue actually, the companies are focusing on now. The third path is involving men in the process, because generally when we're talking about gender transformative approach, we're mainly working with women, but we shouldn't forget men, because involving men in the process actually ease the process, will ease the process. We have to have trainings, workshops on how gender inequality also affects men. And through that, family, society, and workforce. Paternity leave is also an important issue to involve in men in family chores. So, I mean, these are the paths that we can actually follow to challenge the gendered structure of the companies if we want to have more women in the leadership positions and more women to endure in the workforce. I think I'm coming to the very end because my time is also finishing, but I want to finish my speech by a very famous quote from the Supreme Court Justice, late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Quote, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made." End of quote. The only thing we have to do is creating the environment for us, for women, to empower ourselves, because not only will benefit from this, but the world will benefit as well. Thank you for listening.
I think finishing on a Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote is very poignant, and I doubt very much that it'll be the last time that she's mentioned today. Fabulous, Milton. Thank you. Now we have a number of questions that have come from the delegates today. Anyango, were you able to flag up a few key ones, or do you want me to start?
I can share them with you. I can share a few with you. So the first question is, how do women navigate the complexities of being unequal in the workplace while also being supportive of men, especially men who are underrepresented and unfairly treated subgroups like Black Americans? I think that was a very important question that we may want to tackle.
So that was a question about women being able to achieve and own their own success rather than feel owned, but also support men. And there's also a contra question about how men can support women based on, you know, the wealth of data that there is out there on, you know, gendered social norms. How can we support each other better? And when we get to the workplace, is it too late? Do we need to be doing this an awful lot earlier? Melton, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, we have to start very early because, I mean, I think it was 10 years ago, we conducted a research for elementary, junior high, and senior high students about gender, about their thoughts, their perceptions about gender equality and violence against women. And it turned out to be actually elementary school is also so late, because the construction of gender equality in their minds is very set when they reach elementary school. So we have to start from a very early age, even maybe from, birth. So this is very important. And when we enter into the workforce, it's a bit late. However, nothing is late. I mean, wherever and whenever we grab women or men to talk about gender equality and gender inequality, how their lives are affected by gender inequality, I mean, we have to find a way, I mean, to reach them at every level of their lives. So the important thing is actually how we will, how men and women are support each other is trying to show them how gender inequality is affect them negatively. Their relationship, their work life, their social life, everything. Their relationship with the children, their parents, their, partners, their colleagues. I mean, this is very important that us to show them how gender inequality actually affects them negatively. I always actually tells this story to men when I'm working with them on gender inequality. I always ask them, what do you think? Do you think gender inequality is affecting your life? Most of them, actually most of the time, most of them think and responded as, no, I mean, why not? Why? I mean, we're men. But when I tell them that gender inequality is killing you early, then they started to, think about that, because gender inequality is really killing them early because of the roles and responsibilities that are given to men, because, we're just, pampering them and saying them that they're the, heart steel of the family. They cannot be sick. They cannot, if they have to stay long, they don't have to, they will not sleep. They are the steels of the family and society. Generally, they don't go to doctors when they are needed. And the cancer, the heart attack, the first heart attack, they're generally, dying. So this is the start that I actually interact with men when I'm dealing with gender equality, issues. I don't know if it is a response to the question. Thank you.
Yeah, it is, and there's a lot of commentary going on in the chat. And I think I wholeheartedly agree. Equality, like charity, begins at home. So it begins with breaking down those the social norms, those gender stereotypes, and demonstrating equality between the parents, not just in what you do for a job, but what you do at home. So there was a question, I think it came from Tina, around what we can do to ensure that women have an environment in which they can succeed. And is access to admin support, is that something that is holding back women from accelerating up the ladder?
Actually, it should again start very early, because, when you are in a formal education, if you are supported by, as a young woman or a girl child, if you're supported as that you can do anything you want, you actually will grow with this mentality in your mind. So it will be easier when you will be in the workforce. It will be easier to think that you can just, step up those stairs. But if you are always stopped by saying that girls cannot do that, boys can do this, you cannot do that, it will actually travel with you all through your life, and even you, become a very successful women in the workforce, it will actually stop you to step up all these stairs. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks ever so much, Melton, for your in-depth insight and the examples that you've given today. You've certainly engaged the audience. I think now it's time to move across to our panelists. So what we're going to talk about, what we're going to invite the speakers to talk about, is what enables women in science and education to be at the decision-making table, where women deserve to be. So what I'm going to ask each of the speakers to do is on their individual topics is to share their experience, their stories and their learning, and really give an insight into the journey and the barriers that they face and how they've overcome them. So our first speaker is Nadia from Medtronic. Nadia, I won't do you justice by giving an introduction, so I'm going to ask you to give a brief introduction to yourself and to talk about leadership skills, how you've adopted your skills, learnt along the way, and the legacy that you can leave behind. So I'm going to pass over to you, Nadia.
Okay, so first of all, thanks to all attendees. It's a great opportunity for me attending this forum, which I suggest that it will be in regular form, because it's on our hands to help the new generation of women to do more that we have did during the years. So first I will talk about myself. So I have a PhD in pharmacy, and my last position now was in country managers for some countries in North Africa region, but being at this position, it was not something easy, but I did my best. I was a very young pharmacist who joined the worldwide pharma companies at this time. It was Pfizer, and I was the first woman in the company. So being at this stage, I develop myself, and I see how I will be in a leadership position. It was not easy, knowing the mentality in some region, and how to develop more women to go in senior leadership position. So what I did, and what I would suggest to the young population of women, is to believe first on their skills, to be equal as a man, and to do a lot of effort, to don't have any barriers when it comes to skill, and to be in a very good position that we are leaders for women, for men. So for me, what make me as a great leader in this region and in different roles that I have played in my professional career. So first, it is my skills, my scientific skills, my personality, and my character. And I have been in some position in the shortlist. I was the only woman, and being in front of 2 or 3 men when the decision maker for this position was also a man. So it was very hard that today we are pushing women to be equal as a man. So we work on our leadership skills, how to be the best leader, how to enjoy the job for all the team, and also how to drive the team to be the best team, and also to develop women. Because as a woman in my different position, I have also pushed that women will be in several leadership positions. And I can tell you today, in my organization, in the North Africa organization, the percentage of gender equality, we are 50%. which is very, very, very good compared to the other region when it is also between 20 and 30%. So today in North Africa region, for Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and those countries that I am leading, it's 50%. So we are equal between men and women. We have a we need to be very proud that we are women, we are in leadership position, because in parallel after work, we have also other responsibility. We are talking about family responsibility. We have most of us, we have family, we have kids. We need also to take care of our family, of our kids, and in parallel also to succeed in our job, which is not the story of men's. Men, they are not having a huge role of responsibility as women we are having. And this make women very proud that we are succeeding in our role in family and also in professionally. So today, what I can resume as best success story for women, if we need to succeed, first we believe in our capabilities, our engagement to succeed, and also as a woman, we need also to take care of women, to develop women when we have in our organization, as well as men also, but to think how to be very equal between men and women. And also what I can also share, that always listening to our people, including women and men, and sometimes we can as a leader help each woman's when listening, when helping from family or from job. It is very important. So today in my company also, I am in the global woman leadership organization that we are working how to develop women, and how also to take care, to listen, and to offer the best thing in work that we can give to women, because it is also linked. Women are working hard to be equal to men. In some position, there is a very difference in salary between women and men. So today we are working that salary will be equal. And I am very proud, the company that I am working for, we have reached all this category of difference between men and women. And there is also something that I will suggest to women, that to work with women as a team, as a grid, and to talk, to communicate. When they have idea, to put it in, to share the ideas. This is very, very good to direct women in a very success story role in future. Okay, let's see. So today I can also talk about my current role and what I am doing for my organization, which is split, very proud, 50% men and 50% women. It's as a leader solving problem, helping women to be developed, to access to the greatest position inside the region or above the region. And also as a leaders, I'm also a coach and a mentor for a lot of women, not only in the North Africa region, but through Africa and also through some European countries. So I will be very supportive to share some best practice in a very conservative region, which was before 10 years or 15 years before, and how we are developing. I'm very happy to see in many pharmaceutical companies in the Africa region, we see a lot of women in senior position. And we continue developing, because today, women, when it is a company driven by women, you can see most of the time that the success is there, the happiness also is there through an organization. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about myself, about what I have done during my professional years. And I will let you know that I am also a mother, and I have a kid, and I have a daughter now for more than 19 years. And I'm very so proud. And she's also doing the same role, how to involve and to increase inclusion and diversity in professional or also in social work. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Nadia. It's exceptional to hear that in, as you've described, a conservative region, that you've been able to achieve 50-50, so that parity at a leadership level, and that the abilities of women are not stifled, and actually they're engaged, empowered, inspired, and enabled to take up those leadership positions. I should say that what we'll do is we'll take questions at the very end, after all of the panelists have been able to speak. So our next panelist is Christina Chai, who's going to talk us through the journey of 1,000 miles that begins with a single step. So, Christina, what does it take to be a woman in academia?
Thank you very much, Claire. So I was asked to think about a topic, and I thought that this title would actually be perfect, because it's both metaphoric and it's real. And I'm going to give you a story, essentially, of my journey. So actually, the title is plagiarized from a Chinese proverb, okay? And it talks about really beginnings, okay? So let me talk about my beginning. So the real part about 1,000 miles beginning with a single step actually is because I was born and raised in Malaysia, which is not that far away from Singapore. But at the age of 17, 18, I actually left to study in New Zealand for the last year of my high school and also my undergraduate. Then I went to Australia, and then I did a postdoc in Oxford in the UK. My first academic position was in New Zealand, and the second academic position was in Australia. And in about 2005, I moved back to this part of the world because of my parents who were aging. And in 2011, I basically joined the Department of Pharmacy in the National University of Singapore. I wanted to tell you this story because of the fact that, you can imagine when I left, when I was 17 or 18 years old, I was this very traditional Asian female child, okay? I was meant to be seen and not heard. You have to respect anybody who is your senior, and you basically gotta be obedient. And any of my colleagues who know me, or if you know me, you will know obedience is not very high on my list currently. And so, what changed? What changed was the fact that when I went to New Zealand and spent all those years in a so-called Western country, I learned to basically respect myself. And there was a certain sense of worth that was not really related to a very traditional Asian sort of values in some ways. So I remember one time when I went back home for a holiday, and my mom said to me, "You have changed. And trust me, that was not meant to be a compliment. So that's basically how I transform myself as a person, okay, with an actual single step moving to New Zealand for my studies. Now, when I look at that context of the title in a metaphoric sense, I look back at my own career right now, okay, and I've had many different opportunities. And the leadership positions basically that I've held, most of them were basically by accident. I was a manager, I was a director of graduate affairs, I was assistant dean, I was deputy head, and now I'm the head of Department of Pharmacy. I'm also the jury president of the L'Oreal Women in Science Fellowships in Singapore. But when I look at all of this, I ask myself, what does it all mean? And does that mean that me as a woman is in fact different to all the other women? And I don't think so. And so when I reflect on my own self, I realize that the opportunities that I've had were because I took the first step of doing something that somebody said, would you mind doing this? Okay, and I never really thought about whether I would do it because you know, I would get extra remuneration, rewards, fame, whatever. It didn't matter. I did it because I was interested and I wanted to learn something else. And when you do that, what happens is that you end up in a situation where if you're interested in it, you will do well and more opportunities will essentially come. So my message, I guess, is essentially about how you should really embrace opportunities. For the young, pharmacy and pharmaceutical scientists in the audience, this is something that is kind of really critical. And I have also worked in many different countries. So you can imagine when I moved back to Asia and worked in an environment which is really very male dominated in terms of the senior management, this basically came as a real shock to me. In fact, I think it also came as a real shock to them because in the sense, it became, they did not know how to handle a very, I guess, outspoken person like me. So I think that we need to think about what leadership actually means. So the previous speaker talked about RBG briefly, and I have actually been thinking about what she was actually known for. And a lot of people said that she was in fact a feminist. Actually, I don't think that's true. What she was and what people recognized in her was that she was an authentic leader. And here I'm going to read a quote from Brené Brown, her book, which is entitled The Gifts of Imperfection. And it talks about authenticity. It is about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because of the fact that, you know, when you take up any positions in terms of leadership, you do have a choice. Some people choose to look for greatness at the expense of everything else. Or you can choose goodness instead of greatness. Because as you all know, that just because you're a leader, it doesn't mean that you're a good role model. So I feel that this is something that we need to think about. And I think that, I know this is a little bit controversial because we're talking about women in leadership, but in a lot of ways, what is the greatest sense of betrayal in my own view is that when you have a woman leader who basically seeks greatness rather than goodness. And when that happens, it kind of almost puts everybody who is trying to use this person as a role model, okay, into a situation where you can no longer, that's not the sort of leader that we would want. That's not special, is to be a woman leader. So that's all I wanted to say for now. And I would like to also thank the organizing committee for this fantastic opportunity for me to be able to share my experience with you all. Thank you.
Marvelous. Thank you, Christina. I've been writing down frantically some of the quotes on here, and I've added Brené Brown to my FIP-WiSE book list as well. Okay, so our next speaker, I think we can all learn from these particularly troublesome times. So Leonora O'Brien is going to talk about being a virtual leader using technology. Over to you, Leonora. Leonora, we can't hear you at the moment. Okay, perhaps Leonora's having some problems with her sound or connection. Could we move on to Vibhuti? Vibhuti, would you mind going next and talking about leading gender transformation leadership?
Sure. So
Wonderful.
thank you. Thank you so much. I was at first thought, this is ridiculous because there's such a powerhouse of women here. And I just want to sit here and take notes and listen. And I'm so incredibly not only humbled, but grateful to hear all of these lessons. And then I thought, oh, we don't even have to have slides. Fantastic. But then I wrote what the equivalent of likely a book is in understanding how to even start to begin to tell the story. So I am a first generation immigrant. I was born in India, in New Delhi. I came to New York City when I was about 10 and a half years old. And pharmacy was sort of a happenstance for my family as a first generation immigrant. And all through my journey, I just had to survive, right? So I was an undocumented immigrant. I had no financial capital, no social capital. And so it was quite a journey, and I can probably fill lots of time with it. But what I thought was interesting to point out is that, you know, every time a mentor or somebody asked me what it is that I wanted to do, I used to practice my token answers because most people in the US couldn't relate to my background. I didn't have a choice as an immigrant who didn't have a lot of things. I didn't have a choice to choose my path. I had to do just something to survive. And so I remember being asked that question and thinking, it all depends. I don't know what I can do. And so, after I did pharmacy, I did a residency and I took time off. And a lot of the commonality that weaves through my story is really the idea, and again, RBG, to dissent and to be able to speak up and say no, when you feel that that's okay. And what was interesting was after my residency, I took time off, and I have a council of mentors, a couple of whom are on the call today. And I just remember that not all of them sort of know each other or may agree on things, but I remember I go to them to understand if I make a decision or if I have something to do, will they be supportive? And these are not people who tell me that I'm great all the time. It's people who can call me out when I need to be called out. I'm a feisty person. I'm always ready to fight at something. And so it's great to have a container who can help channel my energy, but also be incredibly supportive, that I can kind of come into my own. And so, after residency, I took this time off. I became a yoga teacher. I traveled. I taught dance and yoga, and everybody thought I was completely nuts because why would this incredibly successful in my young life do these things and then just wanted to, or everybody was like, what is she doing now? And I hated that question because I was like, I don't know yet, leave me alone. And what was so beautiful was that, again, the feeding of the spirit is what I want to talk about in my narrative. That is so powerful and such a great compass to help us decide the decisions not only that we make, but also that we say no to, that really help guide us in terms of what we can do. I went into academia and public health. I'm a public health pharmacist, and my concentration of my professional work has been racial equity. Not a popular thing to do for 15 years, certainly quite lonely, and comes with it a beautiful basket of comments such as, pick something else because people are not ready to hear that. You should tone that down because you can't say white privilege. You shouldn't talk about that it might offend some men if you talk about gender, or it might offend white people if you say the word racism. So it came with it a lot of this thing, but also a beautiful and thankfully bigger basket of, you go girl, do this, this is important, we need this work. And even then bigger basket of all the stories and narratives that prove the point of why we needed this work to be done. And so, you know, through my journey, I remember in 1 year, I started graduate school, got engaged, moved, got married, got pregnant. I was going through tenure and postpartum depression all at the same time. And I say that not to paint the picture that somehow I'm so strong and that that's the narrative that we need to pass on, but actually to stop this sort of vicious cycle of when we tend to want to always prove why we're so great. I think that women especially, we do this to ourselves and sometimes to each other. We need to stop proving how we're so great and just assume that we all are. And so the questions that we ask are for the stories about how we're such superheroes, not why, and show me why you're such a superhero. So how are we? Because only then will we stop sort of perpetuating these false sort of narratives that hurt us, in the fact that, for example, women, if they say yes or no very fervently, they're aggressive, versus male are good leaders and assertive. Or women, I use quite a bit of comedy, women who use comedy are self-deprecating and weak, versus men who do it are just so funny and relatable and so wonderful. So we need to fight those things. And so, you know, my concentration is sort of thinking about dismantling structural racism and structural inequities, right? Where are the processes and structures that are built in to perpetuate these things, not just interpersonal within each other. And so it's essentially, we're working in the very structures that we're actually trying to dismantle. So how does one do that? It's actually not about putting a Band-Aid or sort of merely adapting to existing systems. We are actually reimagining systems that we want to leave for long after we are all gone from this earth. And so how we raise our kids matters, how we use our support mechanisms that extend outside of our home matters. So there's been a lot of conversation here about the raising girls, right, and raising boys. You know, even in words like, I have 2 little girls, and when I was pregnant and sort of understanding how to, you know, what do I do? I know nothing about parenting, and I don't know if I'm doing whatever I'm doing is right. But what I do know is that I can pour my love into them, and I know that they'll at least feel that or be smothered by it, perhaps, and that's fine. But I do remember reading and hearing that the way that we even use our vocabulary, words matter. So we tend to tell girls, you know, be careful, or you know, it perpetuates the being risk averse for women that actually over time has led to them not applying for jobs, because out of 5 criteria, they may meet 4, but that one they don't want to apply for. Whereas men are raised to take risks and say, hey, I meet 1 out of the 5, but I'll just put my name in there. So how do we pivot? How do we gain champion allies in men, people identify as men, but also allow women to enter that arena in a confident manner? And even when our home is supportive, I was very lucky. I think the narratives we've been hearing about parents raising us to be super strong, you know, I was lucky that I was raised in an environment where I was asked for my opinions from a very young age about political happenings and about riots in India and about, you know, all sorts of things that were happening. But the environment matters as well. When I step out of that home where I'm taught to be bold and risk taker, I go to the environment that says you need to tone it down or know your role. Or as Aaron Burr in the beautiful Hamilton musical says, talk less, smile more, that I know Tina Brock has in her desk to kind of remind us of these perpetuations of these structural pieces that we need to dismantle. And the reason why this matters is because if we do not, we can work on interpersonal fronts. We can get to know each other and one person at a time. And I do think there's power in sharing those narratives and transforming the way that we think about things. But there is also an absolute opportunity and a responsibility for us to dismantle these structures that, again, perpetuate long after we're gone, so that we can actually leave this better for the next generation, so they don't have to come over and fight the same exact fights that we've all been fighting. And so it's not, you know, it's not about normalizing or saying that I am just like the majority or I'm just like everybody else. It's actually about taking what makes me unique and the intersectionality of all of my identities and making sure that we're being deliberate and intentional about celebrating that, about making sure that we do point out those differences that make me unique, that because that is the perspective that I can bring, and I shall be valued for that perspective. And it's about stepping into your narrative so that you can own it and that you can shine the best that you can, rather than trying to manage processes where you could probably put that energy into writing a book, for example. And so some of the ways in which I think is most important to recognize is, one, through self-awareness, right? What have I internalized in my journey? What do I envision, and what is the work that I need to do within myself to then function in a space that will be transformative, right? Because if I don't know what triggers me and how to react to that in a compassionate manner for myself, I surely am not going to be able to bring true compassion and be that authentic leader and bring that vulnerability in such an intentional manner for others. And transformation is about growth and evolution. It is about using that fire and the emotions in us to transform, rather than letting it consume us and sort of burn us down. I use this methodology that I developed called the dark room methodology, about essentially doing a lot of the inner work, akin to when you're creating a photo or developing a photo in your dark room. So when nobody's looking, right, what is it that I see in those blemishes? And how do I accept it as an artistic thing and something that I grow to love? But also, how do I use it for humility and then turn it into practice and healing, so that I can actually, again, take what I've learned and transform it, so that the new sets of structures and policies don't have to perpetuate the same systems that I'm fighting. And the second thing is identifying sort of what that support looks like for you. And I know we've had some beautiful chats in here about sort of finding that tribe. I also would say not only find your tribe, but find your quiet center, right? Find that place that you can be at that actually fulfills your spirit, but also find the people where you can get that support, so that you can actually go out and ask for help, saying that you can't do something, and that your supporters should be able to back you in that category, not just tell you you're so great, but also be able to say, hey, I think there's a blind spot you might be missing, because that's when the narrative gets real. That's when the power comes in, where you both as learning partners can grow from that relationship. There's a real commitment that I want to point out through all of this. I know I have a lot to say, I'm speaking quite much, but the commitment to also self-care and sort of self-preservation in this way. It's not your job alone to, you know, as it is not mine, to sort of fix this issue, but really it's about building a coalition where you can have partners who are way smarter than I am to actually build that coalition and infuse these perspectives, so that the world and what it looks like and the people in it and who's in leadership and who's not, whose voices are being heard, are actually going to be different and more powerful than the world, perhaps even more than what I'm imagining. And so my aim is to one day, hopefully in my lifetime, be at a place where this, and I don't even want to say next generation, but just different groups of people and this coalition that I hope that will build can make my work look so insignificant and almost cute, right? That's my aim. It's fine if it's done after I'm dead, but I would like that during the time I'm on this planet, walking, breathing, I want somebody to make my work look so insignificant, because the progress they will have made will just be so much better. So when they look back, they're going to say, why was this so hard for you, right? And I want to make sure that in that struggle and in that journey, we're also pushing our narrative so that people don't forget what it took. right? So that people can remember things, shoulders that they stand on. And I always used to say that I'm just trying to be a good ancestor. But I think I've adapted that a little bit into, you know, not till I'm dead, but while I'm actually alive, I'd like people to look at this work and be like, yeah, what she did was okay. But here's what we've done that has revolutionized the way that we speak about things, the way that we do things. And so I would urge all of us to understand and think from that point of self-preservation, from that point of self-commitment, from that point of understanding who we are and that uniqueness that we bring. What can each of us do within our own spheres of influence? What can we do to influence little by little incremental change, as little as it may be or that you perceive as it may be, to not only put the burden on ourselves to have to break down things and sort of keep that sword up that we're always fighting. I'm always like this. And I just want to put that down to be like, I'm not the one who's like this. I've got 1,000 people or more behind me who don't even have to be like this, but they're just going to do things. We no longer need permission. We just need to do things and reimagine the systems that we're in, call things as the way they are, and surround ourselves with a support system that helps us be empowered to say what we need to say, but also be okay sharing some of that burden so we're not carrying it alone. And so I'm just going to leave us with that urge and request.
That was breathtaking. Thank you, Vibhuti. There is there's so much love and empathy and joy around the statements that you are making, and the mantra of making your work insignificant or even making this movement redundant, I think is something that we can all get behind. Thank you. And I've sent you a message privately to ask, can you please do a podcast? I think we have Leonora on the line now. Leonora, can you hear us okay?
Hi, Claire, can everyone hear me?
Yes, yeah, please.
Excellent.
Leonora, off you go.
Thank you. Apologies, I had too much technology going on. I tried to get through on the phone. Yeah, no, it's just such an honor, and just listening to everybody. I know you want to leave time for questions, so I won't take long, but you know, these forums just give you so much strength as a woman, and congrats to Dominique as well for joining bravely. It's you know, the he for she movement is hugely important as well, and it's so important that we have men in this together with us to support us. And I guess back to Melton's point, so you know, I grew up in the west of Ireland. I always had a father figure who encouraged me to absolutely I can do anything I want to do, and that I've carried that with me in my professional career. You know, growing up in that environment, I was totally oblivious to the fact that there was even a difference between men and women. I just carried that all the way through my schooling and all the way through my decisions, and I still, you know, that is ingrained in me. So I became a pharmacist and worked in many kind of leadership roles, but then I just saw that there was a need for a solution, a technology solution for patient safety, to record and review and analyze all the medication incidents that occur. So I embarked.
Leonora, we've lost your sound.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So when I went into this accelerator program, it just dawned on me that there was 15 companies selected, and we were the only female-led company, and that was only back in 2012. So it was only then, when I'd finished university and got all these leadership roles, etc., that when I jumped into technology, that I really realized, crikey, there's a real imbalance here. And so I started to understand that in technology, you know, only 5% of CEOs in tech companies are female. And in technology, 56% of the women that do, they leave their jobs at the peak of their career. So, and there's only about 30% in leadership positions. So so I'm getting more actively involved in seeing how I can personally help with that. And I do that through promotion of, for example, a good national project here in Ireland. You know, back before 2012, only 7% of the government funding into technology companies were into female-led companies. So I've got, you know, involved in helping promote that, and there is a specific female-led fund now, because for whatever reasons, when there was a fund that people could go and get support from the government from, there was very few women coming forward. But when there was put a female fund, so many women would come forward for that, whatever the reasons are, whether it's a confidence thing or whether if you can't see it, you can't be it phenomenon with women, if they didn't see female role models in that and they didn't, you know, associate with the people that were behind the program. But now that was 2012, and now it's about 50-50. So it's you know, things can change quickly, and if you just get behind them, get involved in forums like we're doing now, and I think Christina mentioned and Vibhuti mentioned mentorship. So I get involved in mentoring women, and sometimes you think, crikey, I barely have the time to do my role. But I think we've just come through a really hard, I think the common denominator between everyone on this call today is we have to be a bit of a rebel, because we've come from a generation where it wasn't the norm to be women in leadership roles, and especially not in technology roles, and a lot of women stayed at home, etc. So, you know, we that have broke through of that cycle, you know, do seem to have that kind of rebellious or determined or oblivious streak to us, and we just are so, as Christina put it, so passionate about what we're doing that we just get on with it. And I think that was definitely the case in my case. But I think now, like for example, I went to Canada for my work and we were rolling out our tech solution in Canada, and my partner came with me, and I have a little girl, she's 3.5, and she saw Neil going out to work one day, and he said, oh, mommy works, you don't work. And so, but not that is the good role modeling either, because the balance is great, but it just showed how easy it is to change the narrative for the next generation. And so as two parents go out to work, that becomes the norm for children. And I just thought it was funny how that had turned so quickly, and how her expectations in life were different, and she would expect to be the person doing all of the work. Not that staying at home is that's the hardest job ever, just to mention. But yeah, I think having a little girl that's 3.5. Claire mentioned the other day she has a 3-year-old as well, and the thing she says to her before she goes out the door to school is not be good. It's to be fearless. And I have started to do that now in the last week, and I thought, yeah, absolutely, that makes just such total sense, because words, as we've said, are powerful. But other things, there are things in companies that we need to do. For example, we need to measure, because you can't measure what you can't improve what you can't measure. So we need to measure what are how many female people we have in certain roles, but not just support roles. We need to, in the technology sector, we need to understand how many developers we have or women, or on the sales team, places where women would have been underrepresented before. So it really is our, we have to have it all the way through our HR policies and our recruitment policies. We have to help our colleagues understand the dangers of hiring in our own image to ensure diversity comes to life and becomes part of our culture. So we have a diversity by design at Pharmapod, and it really is 50-50 in all roles. And I think maybe it is easier to do that from the start when you do it intentionally. But certainly big organizations can try to bring that in over time, for it to become a living and breathing culture. So I'm conscious, Claire, it's 24 minutes past. I could go on a long time, but I just want to leave room for questions and the next speakers.
Perfect. I think we'll come back to the diversity by design and how we can help to implement that into existing organizations and structures. So last on our panel is Aya Yamal to talk about the next generation of women leaders. Aya, can you tell us what your expectations are of those who come before you? So what can we do to ensure that that path is clearer for you?
Okay, so can I just have a confirmation if you can hear me? I'm trying also to open my camera, but the
we can hear you.
Okay, so hello everyone, and it's a great pleasure to be here among all of you. And being the last speaker, it does put a lot of pressure on me, but I'm really happy that I enjoyed listening to all of you and got some advices. I am considered a junior maybe in terms of speaking about the topic about gender equity, but in my opinion, like gender equity is just something that everyone lives through, or it's just something that we all live in or we all experience. So it's easy to speak about it, or it's easy to share experience about that. So maybe I can give a brief introduction about myself. I'm based in Sudan. I'm from Sudan, and I currently serve as the president of the International Pharmaceutical Student Federation. I'm finishing my terms soon, end of September. And also as a profession, I'm working as part of the International Italian Cooperation Agency that is basically deals with strengthening health systems and communities' resilience in Sudan with specific target on migrants, IDPs, and refugees. So this is basically what I'm doing, which is maybe considered a shift of field, but it's something that I really enjoy, especially that I'm in an environment like Sudan where such interventions are highly needed and appreciated. I'm also honored that I've got several opportunities and chances to speak about gender equity, especially with FIP. And as all the sessions I've attended, the terms that it keeps repeating and all the information that keeps repeating is that what is the source of issue? What can we do? And how can we change the norms? And I cannot agree more with the fact that it all starts from home. It all starts from the culture you live in. And it is specifically relevant to me coming from Sudan, where we have high percentages of early marriages, for example, out of school children, specifically females, because of the culture limitation and norms. And also, I could not agree more about the family plays the greatest role in this area. As we are sharing experiences, I'll be happy to share how I got to this point, which I'm really proud of, by the way. And it's been a very long way, but it was not easy. Coming from my house, my mom is a doctor, and in Sudan, she got to work a lot in terms to reach her position now as a consultant dermatologist, and it was not the easy way for her. And I've witnessed some of these steps of how she made it that far. And throughout her journey, and from what she told me, and how she, for example, she lost a baby while she was taking her specialty exams in dermatology, it's really motivating and inspiring. And as part of this presentation is to find a role model. I can proudly say that being raised in such a home where I can see how my parents are trying very hard to reach specific positions or goals made me think that I can actually do it. The thing that proves that it all comes from home, it all comes from the surroundings, and it's not only about fighting for it, it's about if you've been raised on specific values and concepts, you will find your way through. And as I've been sharing in Abu Dhabi during also the gender equity session, I was saying that women generally are very much affected by the imposter syndrome. And this is a concept that I find really relevant to us, is that like, it depends on where you come from, but you always have this thought that I can learn more and I can be experienced, but I can never be a leader. And this is something that is being fed into our heads from the society and the culture around us. But if you can actually look at the world now, you can see that the majority of people who are actually competent or delivering or working very hard are actually women, but the leadership positions are not that they're not representing these percentages. So it's not about fighting for gender equity or gender equality. It's simply about raising or feeding the next generation minds about that you are capable of doing this, you can actually do this, and the country or the area you're in will support you, whether by specific policies in the workplace or regulations that governs all the procedures for women. And then you will simply raise a generation where they are consciously believing that they can reach higher or achieve higher. So I totally agree that it's all about the social norms. It's all about the area that you're in. And as I said, I've come a long way. It was not the easiest, but I'm currently also, after finishing my mandate, I'm moving to London for my master courses in global public health and policy. And I will be specializing mainly on the borders of Sudan, where there is a lot of migrant refugees and IDPs, as well as host communities, where there is high percentages of out of school children, especially females, and health systems are not that well. But my main focus is basically on education, because I feel like it was unfair for us in Sudan specifically in terms of the education. I do believe that with education, you can raise a generation that are capable of achieving whatever they want. Without that, this is the basic right. So maybe there is a differences between the stories that you shared and my story, because I think for me it's a bit deep, that it starts with the root, and it starts with the basic concept that you need to put, or the basic human rights, if I can say. And I've always said that the gender equity topic, or the gender equality in general, has been a very terrifying topic or very terrifying area. And maybe this explains why whenever I'm in a session, there is a very few percentages of men attending. But because I think that the society feels like whenever we're speaking about gender equity, it's about fighting for our places, or we want to prove you wrong, or we want to have your places, or you're always wrong, or the men are always wrong. But it's basically or simply just a human right. It's not only about women or men, it's about just like humans in general. So we need to feed these concepts, and we need to start working on changing the norms, finding the basic or the starting point from the families. And I already shared this with that great panel that was in Abu Dhabi, that maybe it's as simple as just having awareness campaigns to the societies that about women, what are they capable of, what can they do. And I can share just a very small, interesting story about what I'm facing as part of my work when I go to some localities in Sudan, very poor localities, where we're trying to deliver something, whether it's awareness about health issue or something about female genital mutilation, which is still issue in Sudan, by the way. But it's really interesting how you cannot actually, you're not allowed to speak to females in this locality in Sudan. It's in East Sudan, and you're not allowed to speak to them. You're not allowed to tell them that education is possible. And to do this, we had to sit with the leaders of the community, or the sheikhs, as we told them, to convince them that it is about education, and this does not mean that that woman will disobey you or be out of your control or go out of your area. It's just about basic information that they can make use of. So it's really the basic rights that we're lacking at the moment, but I think that we're making a lot of achievement, or like advancement in terms of gender equity in Sudan with the new regime and the new regulation that is being done. We have several policies that is being put in place to have more freedom for women in terms of marriage, any type of civil registration, any type of procedures that the woman can do that previously couldn't do without, for example, the consensus of a man or the agreement of the father in the family. So these kinds of restrictions and limitation naturally brings to the minds of the women that they are dependent on someone and they're not capable of reaching somewhere without the help of someone, or without the guidance, or without being under the wings of someone. So I do believe that our main issue is changing the social norms, and I think it could be just as simple as reaching those people, or having some regulations about the country, not to leave it only for the families, if the families are not considerate to that, to have the country being imposing some regulations and policies for that. I don't want to take it longer, and I'm sorry if I'm not providing any scientific or research-based information, but that's basically how I lived this experience. And I'm really proud of what I am today, and I'm really proud of the community around me that I've been able to change, whether by just a word or just a simple support, or just show them that they can do it. And I feel like we're making it to there. We're on the track, and we're able to actually have this done at the end. So yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. And I really enjoyed being here and to listen to all your advices. It's always great to have this chit chat with all of women around the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Aya, and absolutely no need to apologise. It's wonderful to hear you and the rest of the panel embracing the success and owning your success. We've had absolutely lots of questions come in, and loads of positive statements. Nilhan, if there's any way that we can share the chats with the speakers and also with those who have dialed into this as well, it's so uplifting. But I'm going to try and distill those questions down into just two. So there's been a lot around how we can empower and enable flexible jobs, how we can support each other, what can we put in place to ensure that we clear that path for those who come behind us and make this movement redundant. So I'm going to go along the panel and ask each of you, what is it that you are willing to do to ensure that your leadership can become legacy? So can I start with Nadia? Nadia, as you went first, what is it that you are doing or will commit to doing to ensure that your leadership and your skills will help those that come behind you?
Yes, so thank you. So for me, thank you so much for giving the opportunity again. So for me, leadership is of the spirit. It's fortified by the character. It's enhanced by skills and refined by reflection. It's a study, a science, it's a practice, an art, and it's also its impact, a legacy. This is how I can resume what make a great leader. Of course, first is the character and the personality. And after we add all the points that I have highlighted. I would like also to thank all the speakers because the experience and the best practice between all of us will help the audience, because it makes each of us in her environment, what we are doing, how we are growing, how we are supporting, coaching, mentoring the team that we have around us, and how we can push women to be a star in each segment or area that she's playing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Christina, could you go next, please?
Yep, sure. So, you know, I am trying to give confidence to my younger colleagues whom I feel have significant potential to be leaders. And in that, I remind them that it's okay to fail, okay? Rather than, it's almost better to try and fail and you fail than not to try at all. So I'm trying to groom the next generation of leaders, women leaders in my own department. I don't know how successful it will be, but I'm not giving up yet. Thank you.
Super. Vibhuti, can you go next, please?
Yeah, I think that for me, I treat essentially every interaction as a potential to plant a seed in someone's brain. Not to, that sounds creepy, but essentially to further the work. The way I look at it is, if I'm going to spend energy and if I'm going to take up space in this universe, it better be good, right? I better make it count. And I think that by being in touch with who you are, and again, the concept of being authentic and vulnerable, and to be clear, many women, especially women of color, can't afford to be vulnerable because you have to survive and move on. And the construct of the past has been that you have to just kind of get through that, right? And the vulnerability was seen as weakness, but I think that it is absolutely a strength, but that we have to then, all of us in each other, perpetuate it, and not, when some of us tell our stories, hold it to some pedestal as though, oh my gosh, I have to go through postpartum depression and tenure and have a baby and go through grad school to be cool. I love sort of slashing that down with the best sword I can find, because again, I think we're perpetuating that somehow you have to be exceptional to be validated. And I think that is so wrong, that we have to just, again, come from a space where by being in touch with who you are, being authentic, you actually emanate that. And by emanating that, you're supporting other people in their journey. And just being, you know, unapologetically real with yourself and others. I have been told that when I talk to mentees or younger folks, I bring out the rebel in them maybe. And I take that as a compliment to say that maybe I've pushed them to do something that they may not have been bold to do. I will shout out you mentors if you're listening. Sometimes I get these like tiny little gifts from mentors that just sort of show up out of the blue that turn into the most amazing things on my shelf. Tina, I'm gonna give you a shout out here. Tina Brock sent me this like little thunderbolt necklace because I think feeding my feisty spirit. I think my mentors have learned that like you cannot calm my feisty spirit. And so every time when I do my workshops on equity and racism and I carry that thunderbolt and I use it. So when I'm about to say something controversial or bold, I secretly whisper to myself, thunderbolt. And so I invite others who may not be feeling as bold at that time, place, and circumstance to say, if you've got a thunderbolt, drop it, right? Step into it, unapologetically be real in who you are. And that, you know, people say lead by example. I'm always like, fail by example, right? I'm gonna show you all the pitfalls I had, all the ways I messed up, because there's beauty in getting back up. And we just don't seem to celebrate that enough. Again, this idea of exceptionalism needs to just be slashed a little bit. We can celebrate it, but I think by being authentic and vulnerable and unapologetically real and being able to say, I'm sorry, or I failed with the same grace and compassion and, you know, snap, snap that I have for my successes, it actually paves the way for other people and other women, men too, to just understand that that's part of life. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about kids here. That is how I raise my children. I apologize to them. We have a meeting, you know, if mommy messes up or I'm like, oh, sorry, I did that. Only because when my kids are older, I don't want them to go through these, I know they will, through vulnerability periods and feel like they can't come to me because I don't know what that's like. I'm hoping that I've built enough examples in their lives that they are like, oh, mommy messed up all the time. So she'll definitely understand when I mess up. So failing by example and being authentic and unapologetically real is my hope.
Thunderbolt. Leonora, will you go next, please?
No problem. I think what we can do and what I will commit to doing is raising awareness internally in our own organization and externally about, you know, essentially why gender equity is good for business, because it's the right thing to do, human rights and equality and everything, but it's actually well documented and studied that organizations with a higher percentage of women in leadership roles outperform the average to about like 15% in profitability for a typical organization. So, you know, we need to hammer that point home and raise awareness to the point that that becomes given knowledge within our organizations. And also, you know, I want to implement a role model and sponsors within our own business, and to have like a buddy system or a mentoring system internally for female to female and even female to male, or whatever way we work that out, but helping to have a development pathway career-wise to, you know, towards a leadership program as well within our organization. So I commit to doing that. And also what I have done in the past and what I've found very impactful is I've gone to speak at girls' schools where they're making the decision to, you know, what career path they take. So, you know, becoming more visible in you know, the younger education environment. But I think now it's just made me think I should really encourage and have a program for younger women within my business going out to be that role model instead of it being me doing it. You know, we should all just I know business has to get done, but we all should take a role in doing that, because, you know, when you do that, you get so much back as well. And it's just a fantastic thing to do and really important, because that's something we never had when I was in school. And also just to mention finally, I've joined the FIP mentorship program and I'm so excited about it. And my mentee is a wonderful, strong female. So I want to authentically share my journey and my mistakes to accelerate her success. So I'd encourage everyone to do that. And thank you, FIP, for giving us that opportunity.
Fantastic. Aya.
Okay, so I managed to open my camera. I'm not sure if you can see me, but yeah. So as everyone, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, just confirming. So yeah, I have to say that I'm really grateful to the opportunities that I got, and I have to use this platform to thank the International Pharmaceutical Student Federation, honestly, for raising or making me the person I am. And I think that before joining IPSF in 2014, which is a 7 years journey, I was this very vulnerable, shy person. But once you get there, you have so many values and concepts that you learn that makes you very strong and very motivated, and also very willing to provide something to the world. So one thing that I think it had to be done, or something that I had to do it, is to reach the position for the president of the International Pharmaceutical Student Federation, which is not an easy thing, and it's not something that you can just decide to take, because you're leading an organization of over 500,000 pharmaceutical students, a huge responsibility. But thinking that I might actually be the first woman from the Eastern Mediterranean region office, the idea that taking this position would actually give the thought to other people that you can actually get there was my motivation. I was not there to represent myself. I was there to represent a whole race, if I can say, behind me, a whole region behind me. And it was really overwhelming, because every day I tried to do the best I can to show that we made it there and I can actually provide something. So this is the concept that I have in mind, and this is the concept that I think I will be taking forward even in my country or in my field, is that I think women are so, they're not vulnerable, but like a simple word can make the difference, a simple action can make the difference. We need to shift from thinking that I don't think I can do this to the fact that I can do this and I will learn by doing it. This is a really important statement that we need to keep in mind, that you're not requested to know everything. You're not requested to be experienced about everything, but you can learn by going forward and doing actually the stuff. So this is what I will take forward. And this is, I think, the basic concept behind how we can make the change forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Aya. I think we're all very, very proud of you. Malcolm, are you still on the line? I'd love to hear your contributions as well.
Yes, I'm still on the line, and it's so interesting, and I'm still so excited to hear all these experiences. Thank you for inviting me once more. Actually, I'm carrying my mom's legacy. Several years ago, most probably I was 8 or 9, I requested from my mom to write something into my diary. After a week later, it's a very long time, she handed over my diary with a very short paragraph saying that every daughter criticizes her mother. This is natural, and this leads the daughters to grow. And she actually mentioned that you will also criticize me in the future, but this will make you to grow as well. And I'm sure that if you will have a daughter in the future, she will also criticize you, but let her to do that, because this will make her grow as well. Now, with this legacy, when I'm working with younger people in my work life, I always tell them to be critical towards everything, question everything, so that they can understand their wishes towards, life, and what they want to actually discover the world that they want to live in. And the other thing is, one thing that I learned from my father, I'm always saying to my younger colleagues that to be humble, but don't underestimate yourself. To be humble is very important, but especially if you're a young woman, when they say to be humble, it can be understood in a very wrong way. So don't underestimate yourself. And the other thing, the last thing that I try to show my, younger colleagues, that my love towards my work. If they understand working with love actually opens every door in front of them, it is one of the important, lessons of life that they can take. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you. And I know I can't get away with asking you the question and not answering it myself. As Leonora said, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and every morning before she goes to preschool, I say to her, what are you gonna do today? You're gonna have fun, and you're going to be, and she says, fearless. And she reflected that back at me this morning. So I wasn't at home today. So she said to me, Mama, have a good day and be fearless. I promised her when she was born that I would do everything that I could within my power to ensure that she wasn't defined by her looks and she wasn't confined by her gender. And I try and live and breathe that every day. So what I do within my team and within the clients that I work with is I endeavor, I fail regularly, but I embrace my failures. I endeavor to give everyone an environment in which they can succeed and empower them to do their job, and to give them confidence in their competence. Women in general, we do tend to have a crisis of confidence. And my mother had a great quote: if you see someone that's not smiling, give them one of yours. I'm tired of smiling. I'm tired of the tyranny of niceness. I'm fine with making myself unpopular if it makes it easier for other people. So I'm not going to give people smiles. If I see someone without confidence, I'm going to give them some of mine. And I think the last thing that I'm going to do, so I'm a sportswoman, I'm a footballer, so I appreciate the necessity of actually making space for others. Sometimes it's better for me to move out of the way and allow people to come into the place. So I will endeavour to make space for others. If they're going to add more value and they are more excellent than they can do a better job than I can, then I am going to move out of the way. And throughout that, I'll be fearless. before I pass over to back across to Nilhan to round up, and I think she wants to take a photograph of everyone. I mean, the take-home messages from me here are that equity, like charity, begins at home. And I've loved hearing the commitments from everyone that they will use their power, their privilege, their platform for goodness first and for greatness afterwards. Thank you ever so much for your contributions today, for listening in, and to all the men and women on the line today. Nilhan, back to you.
Thank you, Claire. And this is the hardest part after being speechless, after listening the whole session. The best part of course, we discussed this many times. Personally, I enjoy this session a lot. So whenever we organize FIP-WiSE and equity sessions, I'm also taking a lot of personal notes, but also doing this as a part of my job is amazing. So I wanted to thank Claire for excellent moderation, Anyango for excellent facilitation, to all of you participants for your engagement, and of course our panelist speakers. It's been an honor, and I was chatting with some of you. You have given everyone new pairs of eyes and ears and hearts for us to progress with our movement towards gender equity from all aspects. So I want to thank everyone very much. And as this is a special session for us, that we can see each other and I can see the smiles on people's face. So I just wanted to ask everyone if you're able to turn on your camera so we can have a little memory photo shooting for today's. So I'll do that. And then a few words to wrap up today. So wow, I can see everyone now. That's great. So I'm gonna take some.
I've moved my camera back. I ordered a notorious RGB T-shirt for today, and it hasn't arrived. So I can't bring the essence of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I've gone for a Wonder Woman dress instead.
That's great. That's amazing. So please smile. It's coming. It's gonna be done in a couple of rows. So keep